What's up, what's up? Welcome back. Today we're working on a keyboard overlay for stream. So the idea is that I want to click some buttons. I want those buttons to show up on screen somewhere because specifically like in Vim, if I'm in here and I'm like typing stuff, maybe let's pull up like a better example for than this. Hold on. If I'm like in here and I'm like shuffling code around, whatever, sometimes it's nice for people to be able to see like what buttons I'm pressing because they might like pick up a trick or two from Vim, whatever. Also, kind of like looks kind of fun. It might be just like a good way to like, I don't know. It just seems like it'd be fun. Last stream, we kind of got to the point where we have this application that we can run, and it does see key presses in all apps. This is a little bit of a pain. It was a little bit of a pain to get here because you have to get into like on Wayland, which is like the desktop protocol, one of the Linux desktop protocols. There's no real easy way to request for an application to like get all key presses. There's like some permission stuff. So we kind of ended up looking at these character devices that the Linux kernel provides, and we take those and we like monitor them for key presses, and we log them to the screen. Great. And last stream, I wasn't sure if we were going to continue with this on this stream, and I started like writing out like the things that I want to do next, and it turns out there's like quite a bit. So we get another stream for this project, I guess. So the big thing is I'm not really happy. I don't think this is like in a state where I could put it on stream. Like, I don't think that this is like a very good, like if I stuck this, I don't know, over here and I started like typing stuff, like, is that what I want? Not really, right? I kind of want something different. And so I was like looking at like other examples. I was looking at like the key overlay in Blender, and this is like a popular plugin or whatever, but I was just kind of like looking at what they do. So if I hit buttons, they kind of show like modifiers all the time. They show the mouse all the time. They show like chords, and if I type something multiple times, instead of like popping that up the list, they kind of just like duplicate it, and they say I pressed D 15 times. And so I kind of like some aspects of this, and so I want to take like repeating. With Vim, I think it might be kind of interesting in like coding in general. I probably don't want this to be like always flowing upwards on the next character, right? Like if I do something like type, Shift V, jump to the bottom of this, delete it and paste, like that kind of makes sense to be maybe a set of actions, maybe. I'm not sure. So I kind of want to experiment with like maybe grouping things together based off time. I do like the idea of showing like key chords, like modifiers plus button, as well as showing modifiers kind of statically. And maybe I kind of want to show like which buttons are pressed down right now. Not really sure. Yeah, so I just want to kind of experiment with UI there a little bit. And then there's just like a bunch of cleanup to do in here. So we didn't really do any like proper error handling. We have like some like hard-coded things, like my keyboard is just like hard-coded in here. I want to like kind of get that out, maybe set up some sort of configuration. Yeah, so I think we're just going to start moving on that. One of the first things I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that the window is always on top and non-interactable. So there's just a couple of things there to like set on our GUI framework. We can like ask it when it creates a window for a bunch of like properties, essentially. And so we can say like, hey, we want with transparent, we want a transparent window, no decorations, and then we can also just throw on like with always on top, and with mouse pass through. So that should make it so that the window is always on top, and we can't like accidentally click on it, which means that hopefully I should see here when it pops up. Let's give it a sec. So if I click on this, hopefully my keys go through to underneath. How can I test this? I can like kind of like, and it looks like that's not working, which is unfortunate. I I wonder if this is like a Wayland thing. Let's kind of look at that. So this is in eGUI, and we can look for with always on top. And what does this guy do? He says set with window level always on top. And is this guy used anywhere? Oh, sorry, always on top isn't what we're looking for. We're looking for mouse pass-through. So where is this guy used? Viewport command, mouse pass-through, enable mouse pass-through, and where is this guy used? Window set cursor hit test. Apply viewport window, blah blah blah. Set cursor hit test. So where does this actually try to get applied? Gluten window. Set cursor hit test. This is in Glow integration, so this is in the OpenGL layer. I'm trying to like look for a clue for if this is like unsupported in Wayland or something. So presumably this set cursor hit test applies to something. So what is the type of window here? This is a window type. So which comes from winit. Okay, so we can look at the winit crate, which is like the library that we're using, or the eGUI, our like GUI framework, uses under the hood to initialize a window and interact with the operating system. Basically, it's like ending up making Wayland calls. So let's kind of clone that guy and look at him. It was cursor hit test. Here we go. And here we go. So we have, this is the Wayland implementation, which looks like it is supported. But if we look at the X implementation, where is that X window? It looks like they are both. Oh, oops, I'm on Wayland again. Set cursor hit test. And we should be looking for something like X11. Yeah, we have like X11 window set cursor hit test. It looks like they're both supported. But it's possible that maybe the like X11 implementation that ends up getting used by default, even though we're in Wayland, isn't working correctly. So we could try in our crate, in our program. I think that there's like a feature flag on eFrame or eGUI to like enable Wayland support specifically, and so it's possible that that's required for this to work. So let's just take a quick look at that. So let's look at the eFrame cargo. Somewhere in here, they're probably going to have like some features. And I assume one of these is going to be Wayland. I think I've seen this somewhere. Yeah, here we go. Enables Wayland support and fixes clipboard issues. So this ends up using Wayland in winit. So I guess, is there a way for us to check which features we have enabled by default? It does claim that the default features, where did I see that, does have Wayland support by default, which is kind of weird. So maybe there's some reason that like we're not getting the Wayland path. Because like you can tell, hold on, where am I? Where am I? I'm in the wrong window. When I run this guy thinks he's an X11 window, which is kind of interesting. But here, if I look at like Wayland, it like, yeah, I should be on a Wayland display. So let's think about that. I guess we can maybe try to see who's making that decision. Oh, if so, just try to do onset display. That's not a bad idea. Display equals cargo run. Maybe we have to force it. Wayland status, no Wayland lib. Good call, good call. So I guess I probably need to pull in something in my environment to make Wayland accessible. And who's saying this? I guess we can look at rust backtrace equals 1 and we can see who doesn't like this. So this is in winit. They say no Wayland lib. So let's look at that. No way. No Wayland. No, that's not showing up here. But here they're showing up. This is in the event loop new. So Linux mod rs. And event loop. I guess this is like impl event loop. Here. Oh, I guess we might be in the wrong version of winit here. But we'll see. So yeah, let's just double check git. I guess we have to convert this clone into like a non-shallow clone to get all versions, so let's just nuke this guy and clone him again, but without the shallow clone, so we get everything. And let's see. So we probably want, this says it's winit 0287, so I assume that there's going to be a tag associated with that. And there is, sick. And then we can look for no Wayland lib again. Looks like that's not coming from here. But we can go now to this exact line. So we go platform Linux mod rs 757 and look for this panic. Here, cool. Cool. So we can look at like a Wayland error, which comes from new Wayland any thread, which comes from like Wayland. Which is a module here. So let's see what happens here. So when he creates an event loop, I'm assuming that somewhere he's going to try to like actually try to dynamic open something. And we're just trying to figure out where that is. So here he's calling event loop Wayland, so we can look for event loop enum, I guess. Here we go. And where does this get used? Oh, I guess we can look for like the exact line. It says Wayland status. Oh, no Wayland lib. We've already looked for that. So probably this is like turning into some. Is this using like a Wayland crate maybe? Let's look at that. So in their dependencies, they have Wayland client. So I guess we could probably guess that this Wayland client guy will probably error out with no Wayland lib. Let's see if we can guess that right. So if we go to Wayland client, look this guy up. Does he have like a no Wayland lib type? Yeah. Okay, so he's looking for lib Wayland. This is like a long trek to get here. But I think that gives us a pretty good clue where we can just add Wayland to our dependency or like our Nix environment. And hopefully it'll like take the Wayland path. And then hopefully our transparency or like pass-through thing is fixed. Maybe. What is it? Lib Wayland? Maybe I just have to is this guy? This guy is the guy probably. Just Wayland Windows system code and protocol. Yeah, I guess we'll find out. So here I guess we just check a Wayland on here. And see what happens. And here we're going to unset display again, try to run. And he still says no Wayland lib. I guess we should actually probably check who's looking for this. Like, what is he actually trying to load? So this comes from the Wayland client library, and again, we're just gonna clone this. I'm sure that, like, maybe there's a better way to do this, but there's something nice about just being able to open the code and look. So we'll go into Wayland RS and we'll go, who returns no Wayland lib in this guy? I guess probably he's going to be wrapped in like an error type. No, yeah, here we go. So here he's calling is lib available, which is defined here. And he's looking for lib Wayland EGL. Okay. And so let's look for who provides this guy on NixOS. Is it maybe this guy? EGL Wayland? That sounds possible. How do I know, like, where this kind of fetch from GitHub? EGL Wayland. Is this what I'm looking for? It must be. EGL Wayland. Like, what library does this create? I guess we can just check. Nix, so we say nix shell -p EGL Wayland. Oops. Give it a sec. And can we, like, cargo run this again? Still not happy, but I wonder if, like, our library path isn't set. So let's just take a look in this guy and see if he's the right thing. So here we can say ls this. That's NVIDIA EGL Wayland, which isn't what we want. We want Wayland. So maybe it is in this first library that we pulled in. Yeah, okay, it is the first library. So it's this guy, and the problem is probably that we just Nix, when we're like pulling this library into our shell, is probably just not adding it to like the runtime list of libraries. So we'll just huck this guy on here, so we can say, I think it's Wayland lib. We'll exit out a little bit and we'll reinitialize our environment. And I think probably then we should see that library accessible. Probably our alternative here would be to disable this like DL open shit, but oh yeah, okay. So I think we got something else here. Panicked at internal error. A handler for WL keyboard panicked. Entered unreachable code. So we're probably just in the same state where we're missing another library now. God damn it. What a pain in my ass. So now we are deep in it. We're in window mod rs in the winit crate. And this is in Wayland. And we're at line 333. Okay. So that's confusing. This is like beyond the simple thing. Let me guess, you're missing XKB common. Isn't XKB an X11 thing though? And we're trying to use like the Wayland thing? Yeah, this guy's just saying straight up no. Alright. What is this guy? A keyboard handling library. Seems possible. Wayland clients still use XCB common. Is an X11 keyboard code extracted to a library? Interesting. So here they're trying to... What are they doing? They have like an event loop. They're trying to queue something, sync round trip. So they're passing their state, and then I'm assuming that this is like an error callback that they're passing in or something. What the fuck is this event queue? Wayland source queue, which is an event loop window target. It would be nice if I had my indexer set up here. So let's go back into this window that I have Rust Analyzer set up and just kind of go back here. And we were in Wayland mod. No, fuck, I already forgot. We were at this. Oh, perfect. So is my language server running? Yeah. But he's probably still doing some work. Probably still thinking, still learning. Yeah, Rust Analyzer running at 100%. There we go. Okay, so what is this guy supposed to be doing? He's... Oops. I guess we could cargo dock this as well, and that would be faster. Oh my god, hurry up. Rust Analyzer, he like worked for a second and then he went back in time. Okay, so on success, if an error is returning your connection with the Wayland compositor is probably lost, you might want to check display protocol error and see if it's blah blah blah. So fallback is takes in raw event, anonymous object, dispatch data. Blech. So synchronous round trip with the Wayland server. This comes from Wayland client. It will block until all pending requests of this queue are sent to the server and has processed all of them. Okay. So this is XEB commenter functions looking up names for such keys in lib input where Wayland and X11 used. That seems reasonable. A handler for WL keyboard panic. So that sounds like we can probably look in the Wayland client crate and look for WL keyboard and see if they're trying to use something internally. Or we can maybe look at let's see. Maybe it's in here. Where I got lost. We're looking for somebody panicked from Winit at this spot. And I wanted to know, this is an unreachable, but somebody's logging this guy, a handler for WL keyboard panicked. And that's who I'm trying to figure out who's throwing that. And somebody's logging Wayland client error. So that sounds like it would be coming from Wayland client. Seems reasonable. And let's look for a handler for not in this crate. A handler for. Yeah, interesting. I can't figure out where this log is coming from. Where do I want to go from here? I guess we could just like blindly try pulling an XZB comment. That doesn't seem crazy. Or I think I saw somewhere that someone has like a DL open thing. Oh, I guess what we could do... Here, I've got an idea. Here. If we go back to our program, we can just call the program directly. He'll still fail. And we can just, like, strace this guy and look for who's trying to open libraries. Is that what I want? Can I look for, like, a shared object attempted to be opened? libxml. None of this looks like what I wanted. I was kind of hoping I would see, like, a DL open in here. I'm using the wrong thing? Is it ltrace is what I'm looking for? Ooh. You found it. So you think it's coming from a generated code from a macro, and that's why I'm not seeing it? That seems pretty possible. It would just be nice to, like... I just want like confirmation. It's so hard to like get to the root of these things somewhere sometimes. Maybe I want like ltrace. Is that the one? I'm looking for like DL open calls because I'm assuming that these are failing because somebody's missing a library, right? That's like the usual call. So if I run this with ltrace, nope, nothing useful there. Fuck. So either it's just broken, which seems unlikely, or I'm missing something important, which seems much more likely. So let's just try what people were suggesting and just try like blindly shoving an XCV comment in here. Oops, not actually. I want Nix OS and just make sure that I guess I just want to look for this guy here. XCV. Is this what I'm looking for? XCV comment. What is this again? lib XCB. So I see, there's like a lot of different pieces of him. Oh, XKB, not XCB. Thank you. There we go. Library to handle keyboard description. So let's try pulling this guy in. And we'll throw this in here too. Just as a guess. XCP is an async lib for X11. Fuck. Maybe that's why I was getting it mixed up earlier. It's pretty possible. Okay. Cargo run. God, you're a genius, man. That's so fucked. Good shit. Good guess. I wonder how I was fucking supposed to know that though. It's great that you guys were here to tell me, but damn it. Okay, so here we're seeing pretty clearly that the mouse pass-through is working. But always on top is not, which is kind of interesting. Right, because like before when I clicked here, I'm pretty sure that we were let's do this. We'll unset Wayland display this time. And we should go back to like the X11 fallback. And yeah, here when I click, it's like not going through. And I can't like select anything in the terminal or anything. But here if I work with Wayland, now I can like click through, but it doesn't stay on top. So can I like say keep above or? Okay, so if I like ask K1 to keep it above, that works. So maybe that's like a good enough compromise for now. We can at least like we can get it into the state that we want it, which is pretty cool. So here we'll say always on top / pass through, and we'll call that done for now. And now we're at around 28 minutes and 30 seconds of the stream. And the next thing we're going to work on is probably start looking at like UI. Well, let's start with not hard coding input device. Because if I want to start getting this like into a committable state, somewhere where I'm like happy with where it is, even if it's not feature complete, I do want that my specific keyboard to not get hard coded in there. Okay, so let's do that. Oh, do I have? There's something else I wanted to add in here. One sec, just so I don't forget. Okay. So let's just try to get this guy out of here. And I think probably the easiest thing to do initially is to just pass in the like input handle as an argument. Maybe later it would be kind of fun to have like a little configuration UI where you can like select from a dropdown of all of them, or maybe it makes sense to like just pull them all. But for now, I think the easiest thing to do is to just pass it as an argument. So what I like to do here usually is instead of like I do like to make like a little argument parser. I guess I want this to be called like args. And one of the things that we're going to have in our arguments is the event handle, event path. Yeah, event input path, I guess we'll call it. And he's going to use std path buff. And then we're going to have like a function that takes in our like argv and returns this like args thing. Can you read fdev without root? So I added myself to the input group yesterday. So I ls-l dev input. On my system, there's an input group that if you're part of it, you can rewrite it. And so I just added myself to that group. But I've seen other programs take the approach of like starting up a process with root that has ability to read those and then like forward the events back to the GUI or something, which might be something that we look at later. Okay, so when we like parse our arguments, we need to say this is unimplemented, so we select file. And in our like main, we'll have like, I think it's std env args is probably what we're gonna look at. And this guy, is returns an args, which is like an iterator of something probably. This guy probably iterates. I assume he implements like an iterator of some form. I guess we'll actually use the Rust docs because those will be easier to parse. So we'll look at args Rust. And he returns this guy, and he implements, iterator. And the item is a string. So here we can say we'll take in an iterator, which is an iterator string. And we'll call this argument iterator. Cool. And he doesn't like that for some reason because I forgot an extra bracket here. And this should say item equals string. Okay. Cool. Which means that in our main, we can just call let args is args parse this guy. And then our reader thread is going to have to get back args keyboard, args event input path. Which means that that function needs to take in the event input path as a path buff, and we can just then open up event input path. Great. Okay, so now all we have to do is like implement this like parse function. We'll make a little help function. Maybe he returns nothing. Maybe returns a string. And I'm just trying to like decide like what I want this guy to look like. So probably we'll say, like what's this guy gonna say? He's gonna say, event keyboard overlay displays keys in an overlay. And we'll have some like args, and we'll say event input path and we'll say that this is path to read keyboard event from. Keyboard events from. All right. Now, I think if I remember correctly, Rust does like some pretty wacky stuff, or I shouldn't say wacky. I think that these new lines aren't going to render the way I want them to, so let's just start by having this guy say args help. And I guess actually we should also say help show this help and exit. So let's just like print this first, just like get an eye for what it looks like. So we'll cargo run, and it's going to crash, and we're going to see. I think that I need to like escape the new lines or something. Yeah. So it's something like I just append this to the end of every line. I think. Yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want. Okay, so now we make our little parser. So we'll say let event input path is equal to none. That's his first state. And then at the end, we're going to say event input path is equal to event input path, okay, or, and I guess we're going to need some sort of like error case where we'll say event input unspecified. Sure. Which means that this guy needs to turn result because like the arg parse can fail. And we'll call it like arg parse error or something. And that means that this guy has to be prefixed with arg parse error. And that we need to define that error type. So we'll say enum arg parse error. And one of the things he has is event input, I guess we'll call it missing instead of unspecified. Okay. And then here we can say arg is equal to event input path. And this is like going to be elapsed in okay because he's a successful guy. And then all I have to do is like start looking for flags. So we'll say what? While let sum arg is equal to arg it next. I need to set him as mutable. We're gonna match the arg, and if it's help, we're going to print the help and exit. So say print line args help and stood process exit 1. Just bail the fuck out of this. We need to, this is an ampersand. No, we'd write as stir maybe. Nice. And if we see event input path, we just set our event input path up here is equal to arg it next into. With a little sum wrapped around it. It looks like we can't convert this guy. Oh, I see. This should be map. We need to map the item like this, which I think we can probably just, I think they might let us write into here. Nice. All right. So I think we, here we need to return this. So we say this could fail and we return result. I guess for now, the only type of thing that we could fail with is an arg parse error. Eventually, we're going to want to implement some sort of like error type that's a little better than that, but that's okay. And at the end of main, we just have to now say that we succeeded. So here we say, okay. We're so close. We have to cover other types. So here, if anything else is written, we'll write, we'll say print line, invalid argument, this guy. And print the help after. Args help. And exit. There we go. We're so close. 124 implicitly returns this guy. Didn't I type okay in here earlier? I must have accidentally undone it. I know you like doing it yourself, but here's a relatively light ergonomic arg parser. So this is like similar to struct-opt, I guess, where you're using macros to define like the automatic arg parsing, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I will say that I I just do this because I think that it's not complex enough to warrant the dependency graph usually. But like, what do these guys use? Maybe their dependency graph is pretty light. Yeah, it's not too bad. Not too bad. We wrote to Fuchsia because clap was too heavy. Yeah, I can see that. Similar to struct up, it doesn't add 1 megabyte to the binary. Yeah, that's cool. I'll keep it in mind in the future. Because I will say that, like, doing this extra work, it's like, I don't mind it. It feels like something that's like, it's simple enough that I should be able to just bang it out. But that was just like 5 minutes of useless shit. Like I could pull a library in for. So yeah, I'll have to decide if I want to switch approaches later. So he's saying invalid argument because I forgot to skip the first thing. The first argument is always the program name. So we just say skip program name and arg_it.next. It's fine when it gets flags. Once you have subcommands, it gets much larger. Yeah, I can see that. There we go. And so now he's saying event input missing, and so we just have to add in, I guess, that error. If we error out here, we should also print out the help. So here we're gonna try to parse, and if we get something, that's great. But if we don't, we want to log something. I guess maybe this guy should just handle it all internally. I'm okay with that. So this guy actually just won't return an error after all that. Here he'll say, he's gonna like try to parse. And then he's gonna have like an actual parse that doesn't return a result. Here. And he's just gonna say self or self try parse arg_it. This guy doesn't have to be mutable. And he's just gonna do this internally. He's gonna say match this guy. If it's okay, he returns it. Otherwise, he does this thing again. Bump bump. And he'll say argument parsing failed with reason E. And somewhere he's saying that he doesn't like the okay at the end of this guy anymore. There we go. We wrote it for Fuchsia because clap was way too heavy. I'm just looking back at that and like, so do you guys use Rust in Fuchsia development? I kind of assumed it was something else. Okay, so now we can finally type in event input path and pass that to dev input by ID USB this keyboard. Very, very nice. Okay. Cool. Happy with that. So now we're at 43 minutes-ish, 44 minutes-ish. And what's the next thing we want to do? I wanted to do bind gen setup. So last stream, one of the things that we're doing here is when we're reading in these like things from the event handle. So hold on, I think I pressed the wrong button. So what we're doing here is we like open this handle to our like input event path, right? And what we do is like that guy promises from Linux's perspective. Linux says like, hey, I'm gonna like give you this structure essentially. So if I look at res input event.h, he's basically saying, I promise I'm going to return this struct when you read from it. And so he's like gonna like take that struct, serialize it's kind of like wrong. He's gonna like basically cast it to a buffer of bytes, and we're gonna read that back and cast it back. And so last stream what we did is we just kind of like copy pasted this guy and like amended him. But I didn't like the fact that basically like depending on the flags that our kernel was compiled with, we might end up with like a different structure. And so I was looking at that and being like, it's technically this is wrong, and that bothers me. And so what I kind of did a quick experiment yesterday off screen, and I think that it is possible to get this set up with bindgen. The Ragi is like plugging more Google code, which is interesting. So this is a bindgen alternative. Oh, but he's like doing C++ conversion, which is pretty cool. I think I've seen this before, actually. I think I probably will just like use bindgen here because it's what I'm familiar with. And it looks like they're kind of saying that they're using bindgen internally anyways, so probably not. I don't, since I'm not interrupting with C++, I'm assuming that I wouldn't really gain much from using that. Yeah, and I did just want to pull in a little bit. I think that we can generate these bindings in a way with bindgen. We can do this in a way where I don't care about the difference in like the time size, and I can just pull it in. The thing you gain is avoiding running your own build RS. Yeah, but I don't really mind doing that. I don't mind this part at all. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to create like a build script that Rust calls when I call cargo build. And it's going to do just like a few things like in advance, essentially. And if I look at my cargo toml, I can actually pull in dependencies specifically for this. So I can pull in bindgen, which is this like Rust project which converts C headers into like equivalent Rust code that you can like, so that you can interop with C essentially. And what we can do is we can just start like reading their docs. So they say call bindgen builder. Bindgen builder. And let's see if like, it would be nice to prove in some way that this is running. Let's just give it a sec. So maybe we can say panic failed to build. And that will at least confirm, yeah, okay, so we are failing that, which is nice. That's exactly what we want. And so now we can start like making our header, our like bindings, I guess. So really all I want to do is I want to pull in those like a couple headers and convert them. So I think I saw somewhere this guy, header contents, lets me essentially just inject C++ code or C code directly here. I say header contents, and I say like this is my name, so I'll just call this like bindings.h or something. And then I want to just like type like include Linux input.h. And then I want to generate bindings. And then actually I just want to expect here failed to generate bindings. And these should be called bindings here. And eventually I have to save those. But I know, so I've had this problem on NixOS specifically a bunch of times, where it just like fails to find my includes. And we're going to skip over details here. But basically there's a guy that's already dealt with this shit. And there's just like a bunch of flags that I need to pass to bindgen to make it work. Or like I need to pass into like, yeah, bindgen is using like Clang under the hood, and maybe like the default Clang arcs aren't really working correctly here. They're not like propagating includes correctly and stuff. Because Nix is doing all of this like weird environment shuffling, etc. So here we'll just, I think you can just do this. Bindgen extra Clang args is this shit. Yeah, Nix could fix this stuff, but it's a long road. I believe it. I like kind of understand why it is the way it is to some extent, so I'm not like too upset by it. And like especially because I'm not really like building. I think that if you build through their like Rust builder, it like works better, but I'm kind of like bypassing all of that because I'm just using like Nix shell directly, so this is the kind of stuff where you know, I am willing to put up with it because I like Nix, but I can see why somebody wouldn't be willing to put up with it. So I think I fucked this up. Let's just double check this. Yeah, they're running some stuff that they don't. I guess I'll put this in shell hook is equal to this like they did. So I think it's something like this. And then I just write export on this, I think. And then I type next shell, and we can just like kind of check our environment flag and just hope that it matches up correctly. I've been building a static clang and sysroot for work, and the Nix users are my worst pain because the interpreter moved. Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see. I would like, if I was running a project and I had like Nix people complaining, you know, I could, I could see maybe being like, not my problem. Okay, so I'm looking for env, grep, bindgen. I just want to make sure that that thing looks about right. So that looks pretty sane. And if I cargo build, does it build now? I'm just hoping that we're getting past that failure. Yeah, nice. Okay, so our build script ran. Very cool. Very cool. And now all we have to do is in our build script, we have these bindings. We just need to stick them somewhere. So we say, I think it's like bindings. I have to look it up. So probably somewhere in here, they must have a sample. Right to file. Here we go. And the file is going to be like, it's going to be like a output directory followed by, we'll call it input bindings.rs, right? And the first argument is going to come from our environment. So stood env, I think it's var, and the key is outdir, and we're just gonna expect here and say outdir not set if it's not set. And otherwise, we then have to say expect failed to write bindings. Okay. So what we should see now is after I cargo build now. After I cargo build, we should see our bindings like in the output somewhere. So probably in build one of these guys here. So this is what we got by running bindgen on the header. And the thing that we're like, the only thing we're like really looking for is, oopsies, this guy. So we did end up with our like input event structure, and so hopefully now we can use that one instead of the one that we handcrafted, and this one should hopefully align with the system in general, which is pretty cool. So the last piece here is we need to include those bindings somewhere. So let's make a input bindings.rs. And I'm gonna like look for the bindgen book because I just know that that's where this comes from, and I'm just gonna try to copy paste something in here. This. So this is basically saying, hey, there's going to be some Rust code in this directory that's like outdir / input bindings, and you're gonna be able to resolve this environment variable at compile time, and then you're gonna concat these two strings together. And so this is essentially saying like include that file directly. And this include guy just says like copy paste that Rust code, similar to like C's include directive. Then we have like these guys up top that say like, hey, the C definitions are gonna have like naming conventions that aren't what you wanted. Rust analyzer, but shut the fuck up is essentially what these are saying. And then we just have to include those in, we have to pull this module in. So I should be able to say now mod input bindings. And if I compile now, it should still compile, which it looks like it does, unless the cargo check sometimes gets like a little bit out of sync. So I'll just run call it cargo build, make sure. Yeah, and it's getting a bunch of like, see, we're seeing like a bunch of unused things. So we should actually just add into this guy and say allow type unused. I guess we'll just say allow unused in general bucket. Does that fix all of that warning spam? It does. Sick. Cool. And actually, I should probably break down what we're doing here. We're saying auto generate bindings for input structure. Okay. So now what we should do is we should go back into our main here, and we should delete our custom version of this and use the one that was auto-generated. Which means here, we're going to be calling input bindings input event new. But like we actually don't have this like auto-generate this guy. So what we're going to do here is we're going to swap to using this like Rust concept that says maybe on init, which says, hey, we're going to like have this thing, but I promise you that you're allowed to be uninitialized, and I promise I'll initialize it before we use it. So this comes from stud mem maybe on init. And this guy's like actually kind of scared, like such a pain in the ass. Because basically there's a lot of things that you would assume are legal that are just not at all, right? You would think that making out a zeroed out int and then assuming that was initialized would be valid. But Rust goes like, oh, well, you're not allowed to use things uninitialized. So this case must not happen, and it might just do some like weird compiler optimizations around that. So you have to be like really careful about making sure that the Rust compiler is like aware that it's guaranteed that something is initialized before you type assume in it. And I'm pretty sure that this like casting it into like a byte slice and then reading into it and then casting it back, I think that that will be fine. But the rules are sketchy enough that I'm actually not sure. But we'll see. I guess we won't see. We'll see either that it works or it doesn't work, and if it works, we'll hope that means it's defined well enough. But maybe in the future we'll get hit by some compiler optimizations and find out that we were wrong. Well, that's okay for now. So we'll say here, after we read it, the event is, we'll assume it's initialized. So this is what, like let event equals event.assume init. You can always initialize it. So actually, yeah, I didn't really cover that part. But the reason that I'm trying to avoid that is because there's this like time value in here, and in the input header, we as the consumers of this API don't know which of these paths it's going to take. So I'm trying to avoid like actually initializing it manually, because I'm trying to avoid ever touching this time field so that we don't have to worry about it, if that makes sense. Right, because like depending on which compile time path we take, we're gonna have to make different code, and I don't want to like, I'm trying to avoid writing like if defs essentially in my Rust code. So this is how I'm trying to dodge that. Here, instead of removing the E from type, they put type underscore, and this guy is input bindings input event. For this type of fully zeroed area is valid though. But like what I don't understand, what I'm not certain about there is if the Rust compiler will allow that, right? Because they're saying here that like making an int out of zeroed memory is like undefined. So I'm not really sure. I'm not sure essentially. So that's why I'm trying to dodge it. Because like even though we know that the type has a fully valid zero state, the compiler might assume that like I'm not sure. Like I'm not sure if I like initialize this with mem zeroed if that would do what I want essentially. Okay. So I don't really want to print these events by hand anymore because they're showing up in the UI fine, and I think that we're good here. I think we're good. So cargo run. Oops, I have to manually set him as always on top. Otherwise, looks like he's working. Okay, so we will call that done. And so now we're kind of like an hour-ish. We're at 59:30. And what's the next thing we're gonna do? So we covered this like bind gen shit. We covered forward keys underlying window. We did this like always on top. I guess we should do some linting. So what I usually do here is I make a little bash script and we run cargo format check cargo clippy. There's a way to ask clippy to validate with everything as a warning or everything as an error. The example I was looking at was zeroing a reference student, not in. Oh god, that makes so much more sense if that's true. I think so. I thought that I saw something about ints on in here when I was reading it last time. As a consequence, zero initializing an int a variable of reference type causes. Oh. I could have sworn that I saw somewhere where they were saying that even things that you thought would be valid would not be. But I am not seeing that here. Yeah, okay. So I could be wrong there. I could have sworn that I saw that, but that can happen sometimes, but in more complex cases. Well, that's comforting. That makes me a lot less worried in general. So when I run Clippy, I think there's a way to like say that I want to deny warnings. Yeah, and then I should exit non-zero. So here I can say D warnings. And I think that's my lint script for now. Generally, the easiest solution to do is put the thing on the stack into 0 and it'll be okay. That makes me feel a lot better, because I could have sworn, like, when I was reading this before, I was like, there's no way that, like, there's so much C code where you just want to mem set to 0 and then call it. So, yeah, that's makes me happy. Makes me happy. Okay. So, I'm setting up a lint script. And we just want to make sure that, like, we're formatted and that we're not getting any Clippy failures. So we'll just fix these quickly. So the only thing that's really complaining about is this guy, frame. He's unused. And here, this is unused. And here, we're not using our return value. So we'll just say expect failed to run GUI. Sure. And now my lint script hopefully passes. And then later what I'll end up doing is I'll hook this up so that when I git push, that this lint script will automatically run, and that will prevent me from accidentally pushing stuff that isn't reasonable. So I think we just git add dot. Looks like everything in here is sane. We'll just say commit checkpoint. We need to put a message in here. Cool. It gets sketchy if you're zeroing a Rust enum or something, which can have weird packing rules. Yeah, I think I saw in here as well that if you zero a Boolean or something, or if you use an uninitialized Boolean, you get undefined behavior because it can only be 0 or 1. So stuff like that. Yeah, or like the non-null variants of stuff. They're like using weird packing, etc. Yeah. Cool. Okay, lint script, easy peasy, done. And so now we can actually start looking at, maybe let's start looking at UI improvements, because that's actually like the most important thing. If it doesn't look good, then I'm not going to show it on screen. We did this already. Eventually we'll have to ban unwraps and expects, but we'll come back to that probably. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's do UI improvements. So back to this guy, right? I want to do this. I want to do something like show the modifiers in the corner, like they're doing here. I like the idea of them stacking up duplicate key presses. And I like the idea of maybe grouping together like quick sets of input, right? So like if I did like in Vim, if I did like a sequence like delete this line, go to the bottom of the paragraph and paste it or something, like it might make sense for that to show up as one string. I'm not really sure. We'll probably experiment like that. Which means that this like state handling is going to start getting a little more advanced. So I guess part of this question becomes like, where do I want to handle all this? Let me just write down that we did something here. So we're switching topics at make at some point, and we're saying, what's the thing we're working on? We're working on UI improvements. Okay. So what are we going to want to do? We're going to say when we get a key code in our app, we're probably going to have to store a bunch of things. We're going to want to store last key press, which we have. We're going to say if we have our current key press, we're going to increment the number of times that was pressed. So we're also going to have to store number of times pressed. When we render out our thing, we're also going to want to store like key presses are going to be stored as like combos with control and alt and modifier, like modifiers, I guess we'll call them. So we're going to want to store like last key press plus modifier state, number of times pressed, and maybe we're also going to want to store like when it was pressed. The idea being that when we display then, we can group chunks of things displayed by some period of time. So we're actually going to have like struct key history or key history item, I guess, because we're not. This isn't the whole history. This is just the one thing in the history, and we're going to store its code, and we're going to look at its modifiers, which is going to be something. Maybe we'll create that structure. And the modifiers, we'll just say, was it control? We'll just say control, shift, and alt, and win, I guess. But we're not going to call it win because we're on Linux. We call it the super key here. Which I've always found really funny. Like, you look at your keyboard and there's just like a giant Windows logo here, and they're like, press the super key. And I'm like, okay. But it is what it is. And code and modifiers and press time, which is going to be a monotonic time. So this comes from time instant. I'm actually not sure if these time instants are monotonic, but we'll pretend they are. And if they're not, well, we'll have a problem. Monotonically non-decreasing clock. Cool. Cool. And so here we're going to have like a queue of things, and they were pressed. You know, we'll just have a key history item here. Cool. So when we receive an event, oh, I guess we also want to store what, like, we'll also have to store when a modifier goes down. I guess that'll come for free. Okay, so what we're gonna have to do is when we pull back these event codes, we're also gonna have to get release events. Right now, we're only getting key down events. So here, we're just going to kind of yoink this guy out of here. Is that why Emacs calls alt meta? Oh, maybe. Neat. So here we're going to pull out this key down, key up stuff, and this is now going to be handled by the app. So maybe we'll say this is like an enum key press state, and we'll say down is equal to 1 and up is equal to 0. And now we can keep track of modifiers when they're pressed or not. So I guess here we're gonna have to store our modifiers not only as like a key history item, but as like the current state. So we'll call this current modifier state, and we'll call this modifiers. Okay. And then we're gonna have to do some like processing of the like input event. So here we'll say function process input event, and we'll take in mutable self because we're going to like update our internal state based off of this. And we're just going to take the event, which is a input bindings input event. And I guess could be a reference probably for now. And here we're going to say self process input event. No method named process input event? Why not? Oh, because I'm in the wrong impulse section. Fuck. This needs to go up here. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to convert, we're going to like look at our modifier state and append that essentially to the key press. And we're also going to check the time. So this is kind of odd because maybe the time should be logged directly from the time val that we get from the structure that we pull, right? So if we look at res input.h, they do in fact tell us the time that they pressed at. But as we kind of said before, since there's like 4 different types here, we don't actually know which one of these we're going to be using. And so I don't really know if using this time is reasonable when we could just use, we could just create our time instant when we read it and assume that it's close enough. And that won't be like perfect, but I don't care, essentially. So let's do that. So maybe when we send input events, we'll send them also with a instant. And maybe we'll say input, we'll like wrap the input event with our own. So he has the event, which is a input bindings input event, and the timestamp, which is going to be an instant. And we will send these guys input event. And now we have to look for where this guy is used and say this receiver also takes in input event. Input event, and so does this guy. And that's probably it. XKB common calls it mod name log or mod 4 these days. Super is just a relic. Oh, that's not nearly as fun as saying super though. Super is so funny. This guy is saying that he wants the modifiers set, so we'll just set them all to false. On startup. Oh, logo. Logo's less... calling it logo is kind of reasonable. It is what it is. That's a lot less funny than super still, though. This is also an input event here. Okay, so what was I trying to do again? I was here attaching the timestamp to what we're sending here. So here we're going to say let event is equal to input event. Event is the event. And the timestamp is instant now. We send that event over, and probably there's a bunch of places where we're not compiling properly. So this guy is event.event.code. Arguments to this method are incorrect. Why? Oh, because we're pushing back the event. So we're going to say here we're going to just push back. What is this guy storing again? This is... He's looking at the modifiers, press time, and code. Right. So... Oh shit, did my Vim crash? I'm hearing my fan spinning, which makes it sound like somebody's having a bad time. What's happening over here? Rust Analyze is going crazy. That's okay. Okay, so we convert this guy into a... Oh god. Come on, Rust Analyze. There we go. We're converting him into a history item. So we're going to say, let... What is happening? Oh my lord, he is freaking out. NeoVim's just going mad. Maybe it's because like the syntax highlighting is struggling because like there's so many compiler errors. That's annoying. So we'll say key press. Oh, it's probably from like trying to get the like auto completion shit. Oh, that's so annoying. Oh my god, that's. Can I just disable the language server for a bit? LSP stop. Okay, so key press event is equal to key. No? He's still freaking out. LSP info. Oh, because Clang D is running as well? How do I stop them all? 0 clients. LSP. I thought LSP stop was going to do it. So, okay, here we go. We're going to call this what? A key history item. The code comes from the event code. The press time comes from event.timestamp. And the modifiers are copied from our current modifier state. So we'll say, what is it called? Current modifier state. Okay. So that means that these modifiers are going to have derived clone. And then we're not going to just unconditionally push back here. We have to do a few things. One is we have to check if it's a key down or key up, and if it's a modifier key, and if it's a yeah, I think that's it. So and if it's the same as the last thing in there. So in here, our key history item actually should also have like a count, which is initialized, which is a usize, I guess, initialized to 0. Which means that whoever initialized this guy is also gonna have to say count is 0. And then we're gonna say if is modifier key event.event code. We're going to do something. We'll just say unimplemented for now. And otherwise, we're going to say if event.event.value is not equal to key press state down, we're going to return, right? We don't have to store our key up events for anything except for modifiers. And then if those things both pass, then we're going to push the event. And then we just have to implement is modifier key. This is going to take in the code of the U16 and return a bool, and this is also unimplemented. And hopefully, at this point, we're like close enough to compiling that it's not going to be like an absolute shit show. So 235, he wants me to pass this guy as a reference probably. He doesn't like at 241 that we are using the code instead of here. This should be item, and this should be item.code like this, I think. Cool. He doesn't like that I misspelled unimplemented at line 211. Unimplemented. And at 214, he doesn't like that I'm comparing these guys directly, so I should be able to say this guy as IP2. There we go. There we go. So now I run this, and I think we should still be in a state where like key presses are getting logged correctly. Ooh. That's interesting. Oh, we're panicking at not implemented, which is expected. Because our is modifiers is not implemented, I think. Howdy, how's it going? Okay, so I think what we want to do here is we've actually, we've copy-pasted these numbers in here now. But now that we have these like Rust bindings auto-generated, we could actually use the definitions of these guys directly. I'm wondering how you're passing eGUI frames into OBS. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is I'm just going to show it on my screen normally. I don't like the idea of like what I see being different than what's on stream. So I'll probably just end up putting it in the corner of my stream. And that's it. Like just screen record essentially. Okay, so I want to update my bindings. Which I think comes from my build script. And here, it's just where I was doing this include Linux input.h. I can also include input codes. What's it called? Input event codes. And then, after I build, I should have the like key codes that are directly in there. I had eGUI streaming frames to the OBS NDI plugin not last year. Was going to suggest that. What is that? OBS NDI. New tech NDI integration. What does this mean? Audio, video over IP. That's pretty funny. That's pretty, yeah, so I guess that's like if you wanted to like log something from another machine is what that's for, I guess. Okay, so if I look at my target debug, I want to look at like, I think there's like key control and stuff. So if we look at res input event codes, and these are called key underscore control. Okay, so I have like match code, and I have all of these like cases where it's going to be correct. So we're going to say here, we're going to use input bindings, everything, so that it's a little more concise. And I think that if I just say like key left control true, everything else false, I do just want to see if this works correctly. So here I'm going to say print, we'll say let return is equal to this guy, and return, and print line is modifier key, and we'll print out ret. And what I hope to see is that when I press left control, it thinks it's a modifier, and everything else, it does not. Expected U16, found U32. So I guess, just to make things simpler, we'll do this, we'll convert it to U32 before doing this match. But we'll see. Okay, so here, if I press control, we got is modifier key true, which is exactly what I was looking for. So now we just have to start like passing in like key shift, key, or right control, key shift, key right shift, and key left alt probably, and key right alt. Cool. So now we just have to say, well, if we get a modifier key, what the fuck are we going to do? So what we're actually going to have to do is we're going to want to map a modifier key to an enum, probably. So maybe it makes sense to, like, parse the code directly. Or, sorry, we should, like, maybe convert it into something. So we could say, like, enum, like, key press. And he's going to be either like control, alt, shift, super, or key with a U16 key code in him. Or say maybe other. And what we can do is here we can say, instead of, we'll say function, parse key press. I guess we can maybe make this like an implementation. And we can say like function from code, and the code is a U16. He returns key press. We can then kind of just take this guy and shove him down here. And then we just like switch behavior depending on what we get here. So then anything else will go to key press other v. We need to start making like arrows for these guys. This is going to be a control key press. And this is going to be a key press shift. This is going to be a key press alt. And I guess we also need super. So what are these called in the input event codes? Super. Win. I actually don't know. I guess I'll just have to press the button. Oh, meta. There we go. All right, it's got to be these. Alt, place with meta. Meta. Okay. Oh, oops, this shouldn't be meta, this should be super. And we'll derive debug on this guy. And we'll say got key press, and we'll just say ret there, and we'll have to print as debug. Cool. And so then we can actually like change this is modifier key thing. We probably actually don't need him anymore. We can say that the let key press is equal to key press from code. Right? And we're going to kind of do different things based off of if he's a modifier. So we're going to say that if he is key press alt, he is going to say self.current modifier state.alt is equal to true. I guess he's actually going to be set to event.event.value is equal key press state down as I52. So if he is a down press, then he gets set this is true. So we can actually probably factor that out. So it'll say what are we going to call that? We're going to say is key down, and he's going to take in event. Sure, we'll take in the event as an input event like this, and we'll return a boolean, and we'll just pull this guy out. And then here we can say is key down event, and that's a lot nicer on the eyes. And now we do the same thing for control and super and shift. And these guys have to get set to control, shift, super. And anything else? I guess we do nothing. Or I guess we'll say if is key down event. If it's not a key down, return. And I guess on all of these guys, we're going to say, well, that's all we're going to do for these, because we don't have to do anything else. These are just modifier presses. Probably. We'll figure that out later. There's a chance that like I'll want to log individual guys on key up, right? I might want to log if alt was released and no other core like key combo was pressed. We might want to log that. But for now, this seems pretty reasonable. Here we are assure from this point on we know it is a key down of a non-modifier key. Cool. I wonder if it's like builds right now, or if I like fucked it up too much. So at 44, this should be maybe code to dodge the like double conversions. And 257, I think this is called sup instead of super. Cool. So now he's bitching about some other stuff. So he now is unused. Up is unused, but that's okay. So we'll just say here, allow unused. And we can delete his modifier key since we're not using this anymore. And everything else I think is okay. So let's start back up my LSP, my language server. Cool. And maybe run them again. Take a little peek skis. All right, so other than caps lock being unbound from control, it looks like it's doing the right thing. So let's go from there. And what we can do is now start thinking about, well, what are we actually going to push back here? So we have these we have this list of guys that have been pressed with their codes and their timestamps and their modifiers, etc. And so I guess when we convert these into something that we display in the UI, we need to iterate them backwards and kind of decide what to do based off that. I guess in here they have their count. I actually think I don't want to store their maybe I don't want to store their count directly in the history item. Instead, we will handle the duplication as we convert those into something that we display on screen. I think that's how I want to handle this. And then maybe eventually we might find out that generating that thing every frame is a little expensive, so we might switch it to end up being we generate that once in a while and then just display it, but we'll see. I've got coffee leaking all over my desk, so I'll be back in 2 seconds. Fixed. Why is setting panel fill duplicated? Did I... yeah, probably just because I copy-pasted something that I didn't want to. Good eye, good eye. Alright. So what was I doing? I was turning these guys into... I was making a function here that walks the history and turns it into events. Or not events, something that I want to display on screen. So what we're going to do is... Let's see, we're going to say, as we walk these guys backwards, say we want to show that times 2 thing. We can say let last item is equal to none. Or maybe we want to iterate these guys as windows. Is that something I'm allowed to do? Does this vec DQ have that API on him? What is it? Windows? So I can do that on slices. Can I what about chunks? I can do that on slices as well. But I think Windows is closer to what I want. I think Windows gives me 2 elements that are side by side. Contiguous windows of length size. The windows overlap if the slice is shorter than size, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I would like to be able to do that, but because this is a vec DQ and it's not available, I think that means that Windows won't exist. So instead what we'll do is we'll just cache the last item. So we'll say that this was none initially. And I wonder if we can store references to the last item so we don't have to copy it. That might be nice. And we'll say what? If so we're going to print only if we don't see the same item twice in a row. Or I guess we'll print, yeah, that's what we'll do. So we'll say if item is not equal to last item, and we'll put this as sum, because this guy's an option, so this guy has to be an option. Then we're going to say, down here, we're going to say last item is equal to item, or sum item. And what? We're going to say let mute last label. No, we're going to say last item count is equal to 0. And so if this is different, the last item count goes up, I guess. That seems reasonable. This equals operator is not going to work here, so we're going to make a function that's like is same key chord, we'll call it, and we're going to say A is a key history item and B is a key history item. And we're just going to say a.code is equal to b.code and a.modifiers is equal to b.modifiers. Like that. Cool. And modifiers is not something that is comparable, so we can just quickly shove a little EQ and partial EQ definition on him, and that should be fine. So wherever we came from here, instead of this, we can say if let sum last item is equal to last item. I don't actually like this. Doing it this way is like frustrating because you kind of know that like on the first iteration you're doing something different, and doing a condition in every iteration of the loop is like fucking stupid. So what we'll do instead is we'll say let item it is equal to self.pressed keycodes iter reverse, and we'll say let last item, we'll initialize this as item it next. This is to be immutable, and we'll initialize last item count as 1. And then we can say for item in item it, but we've already skipped the first one. We don't have to do this like this guy over and over again. And I guess we'll also have to check that the first item exists. So we'll say if this is something, we sure use it, and if it's nothing, we return. Fuck it. Blaze it. I might be tempted to do it on insertion into a richer type, as otherwise the modifiers and counts could change as you dequeue. Is that true? I think that since my modifiers always store current modifier state, the modifiers won't ever like get into a bad state, because I'm not storing history of modifier presses. I'm only storing history of key presses with the associated modifiers, if I'm understanding what you mean correctly. But I could be wrong there. What's this guy bitching about? Oh, it's this equals equals. So here we're gonna say if is same key chord item and last item, we're going to increment the count. Okay. Then unconditionally, we're going to set the last item to the current item, which needs to be mutable then. These guys go way up here. And then we say, if they're not the same key chord, then it's time to print that guy. So we will print the last item code, right? So it's just repeats longer ago might count down as EDQ. Oh, yeah, that's true. You're right. I guess the counts might decrease, which is kind of annoying. But I guess I'll have to think about how I want to store the history then, because it might make sense to store the history. Like maybe I pop the history when I know that I've like stopped that in UI. Anyways, we'll think about it. Fix that in DQ. We'll see. We'll see. I'm sure that we'll notice that later. Okay, so we log the last code, but then we also want to say, so we'll say let the text is a format string that is the key press times the number of times pressed. But we only want to do this if the number of times pressed is greater than 1. So we say if last item count is greater than 1, we will say let the count string is equal to this, and then we can say if it's greater than 1, we do something, otherwise we do something else. This else is just going to be nothing. But in this case, we're going to say format x and the number, which is the last item count. Okay. Which means that here we can say format the key with the count string. Cool. And then we need to set the last item count is equal to 1 in this case. In the case where it's different, then the last item count is 1, otherwise the last item count is incremented. And I guess I think this guy is probably fine. We're going to have to think about like timestamps eventually too. Maybe the timestamps should be incremented here, but we're going to handle that later. Right now we're just trying to get the x4 thing in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I think the first key press was kind of bugged there. See, like if I'm slamming D's, I don't get anything until I press an A, which is kind of interesting. Which just means that we're not handling like the last item pressed probably. Which means that here we just kind of have to do this same thing, like down below as well after the loop finishes. So we'll say function. We'll call this like for now. Later I'll factor this out, but we'll say for now we'll make it a closure. We'll say print last item is equal to. Oh, I was gonna just take in this stuff, capture it automatically, but I can't do that because there's like mutable references. So we'll say print last item, and this guy will take in an item, which is a key history item, maybe by reference, and his count is a usize by reference, and that's just going to yoink these guys. And we also, of course, have to take in the UI, which is a eGUI UI. Okay. And that's actually just the stuff here. And this is going to be count. And last item is going to be called item. Oopsies. Okay. This guy has to be dereferenced. And this guy has to be taken by mutable reference. Which means that down here, all of this stuff I should be able to replace with print last item. And calling it print last item is not really fair because he doesn't know that it's the last item, it's just the item. But we'll fix that in a second. So we just need to yoink this here, and then this guy, after the loop, also has to print them again. Okay. Sure, and then we just need to rename this guy to be print item and he can go down to the bottom. And calling him print is also probably not really fair, right? It's kind of like add item to UI, add item to UI. Okay, so I think that should fix the duplicate key press thing. Yep. Cool. And now I want to start showing as a chord. So let's maybe checkpoint here. And let's kind of say that this was like UI improvements, show number of times key pressed. And now we're going to say that we're going to spend a little bit of time showing modifiers, which should actually be like extremely trivial, I think. It's just in here. The code to char will also have to take in a like, we'll also set like a modifier string. And we're going to have to think about what we're going to do here. We're going to look at the modifiers. So we're going to say item modifiers alt. Yeah, so I guess we're going to say let modifier stir is equal to string new, right? And then we're just going to like append to this string for each modifier that we have. So we're going to have like if item modifier is alt, we're going to push alt plus to this list. And we're just going to do the same for everything. So super control and shift. And here we're going to say shift plus, control plus, and super plus. And then here, these guys all have to be called push string, actually. Okay. And then what? This just is going to say modifier stir, then the other stuff. Now, what's that look like? What's that look like? Oh, that's sick. That looks a lot better already. Yeah, that's pretty cool. We might want to change shift to change the case of the letter we print. If we end up doing something in the future that's like, if we start showing like strings of work as like one thing, like by time sliced, it might be cooler to show something like V instead of showing like V shift V shift plus V. Or but maybe this would end up being like V times 2 shift plus V times 2 V times 2, which maybe is like okay. We'll see. What creator are you using for the GUI? eGUI. Yeah, sorry, somebody in chat already answered. Never heard of it before. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's like just one of Rust's many immediate mode GUIs. I tried a bunch of them and it felt like the least jank, most complete. So it's what we've been using recently. Okay, I think that I want like the text size to be decreased, so I'm sure somewhere here I can just decrease that. Let's take a quick little look at that. See if that looks any better. Does. How do I like resize this window? So if I did something like this, and I put it like just down here, what does that look like? Oh, fuck! Oh, no, I just closed it immediately. Oh, god damn it. Okay. So let's build in release mode, I guess, just to get a better feel. Give it a sec. Ah, fuck it. We'll just run debug. Target, debug, ev test. We'll redirect to dev null. And we'll put it in the background. And he immediately doesn't like that because I forgot to specify the path. So let's just put help here. It's event input path. So this is dev input by ID USB Hoxitech Durgod 320. Okay. So now I have this guy in here, sick. And we will try doing that, like, keep above others and resize. And, like, I just want to know what it looks like if we put this guy kind of over here. Like this. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I think I do probably want... Yeah, I think I will want stuff to be like in the same line probably. Well, let's see. If I were to like rearrange this function, what does that look like? Oops. I would do like go up here, delete this guy and put him down here. That's kind of cool. That doesn't look too bad. We're getting to the point where it's like maybe usable. Okay, so we're at an hour 50. There's clearly a little more to do. I don't know if there's enough to warrant another stream on this, so not sure if we're going to keep going on this tomorrow, if I'll handle it off screen. But yeah, if not, we'll jump back on OS dev stuff probably. Thanks for watching, you guys. If you liked what you saw, I stream most days at around 1 or 2 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. I have a YouTube linked in the Twitch description where all VODs go up. If you're watching on YouTube and you want to pop back into the Twitch and say hi, whatever, chat, there should be a Twitch link in the YouTube description. People have been asking about a Discord, so I tried setting one up and put a Discord link in the Twitch description as well. And there's a link to my GitHub there too. So this code will eventually end up over there. Yeah, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye!